Welcome back. We're going to tackle this big rock here now in the foreground, but I'm not going to make it anywhere near as big as that. It's exactly the same process as we've already done, but a bigger area and perhaps a little bit more detail in. So wet your area with clear water. Add the orange or the yellow, mainly on that left-hand side and on the top. I'm going to put some of that green in again, and then the grey. And I'm still thinking about having this splash at the bottom. So I've wet a bigger area, we've already discussed that. And all the time I'm thinking about where I want this water to be splashing onto the rock at the bottom. Then I'm adding some peat shade to start with, to indicate the dark areas again. So it's exactly the same process. Now I did have to mix a little bit more colour actually of the dark one, but of course I had my colour chart to match the colour, so I knew exactly when I got it right. Another reason to do the planning sheet. The other colours are fine, I've plenty of that. Plenty of the green and the yellow, and it was just the darker shades, the peat and the black, and actually the light grey as well. I needed a little bit more of that. I'm adding the black now. You probably noticed that I put things in and then I go over them because I changed my mind. And I think that's okay. And I think it's good to show that, as I've said before, warts and all. Just shows the process. Going to add some salt now. Now it is important with the salt, I'll probably not discuss this much, but if you put it on when it's too wet, it won't work brilliantly. Put it on too dry, you've missed your moment. It has to be when it's sort of just losing its shine a little bit, beginning to dry. That's the best time. So I'm lifting bits off here, you can see. Getting some light areas in. A bit more salt, because bits dry at different stages, so one little bit might be perfect for some salt, but then you might need to wait for another area before that's perfect. And then carry on. Lifting off, putting on, lifting off with a damp brush. And then putting back in. I'm just putting little blobs of water, clear water at the bottom as well, which will create a nice technique. I'm just going to do a little bit of stamping. I'm not going to do much of this. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, so that looks a little bit odd there at the moment, but I'm going to blend that in and tweak it. Do a bit more. Great for grasses as well, if ever you need to do that. Not that we've got many grasses on this picture. But then you can also put little lines and cracks in with your very fine brush as well. The thing with this is really not overdoing. I've already said that, and I'm in danger of doing that as well, because as I've mentioned, being a trained illustrator, that's what we used to do. But sometimes you just need a little bit of information, a little bit of detail. You don't need to go mad with it. An artist who is particularly good at that is David Bellamy, not the guy on the television, but the artist. Let me just show you. This is his Pembrokeshire book here. If I just find one particular picture I like. This is quite a nice one. Can you see? He's got nothing there, and then just the odd crack in places. So it's just putting enough information for the brain to know exactly what's going on. She says, going back to her fiddling. But just bear that in mind. Don't overdo it. Particularly with things in the distance as well. Think about what you would see with the naked eye. You would see bits, but you wouldn't see everything, particularly with the rock faces in the background. I suppose you can put a little bit more detail on things in the foreground. That's my excuse anyway. Like you see, I've left that light blue sort of splash. I want to leave that as it is. The salt's created that. So that's what it's looking like so far. I'm going to now do the smaller rocks over on the right hand side, and I'm going to do these rocks in two different ways. So on the right I'll do them one way, and on the left I'll do them another. First of all, I've got a very stiff brush, just like an acrylic brush or an oil brush, and I'm just lifting off any hard lines. We'll do more of this later, so it isn't absolutely necessary that you do it now, but sometimes I just get fixated on it and I have to do it. So don't worry about it unduly. So what I'm going to do on this side is to wet the sea and go around the rocks. Okay, so I'm wetting underneath, but I'm just going to do the top section. And you can try both ways and see which you prefer. So I'm going around the rocks on this side. On the other side I won't. I'll do the sea first and then do the rocks after. So let's just make a start with this. So in exactly the same way as you've done your others, I'm going to start with a slightly lighter colour. But this time you've got to be careful that you don't touch the water at the top. You know, we've just wet around it, so just be careful. At the bottom it's fine, because obviously we want it to be softer at the bottom because of the waves. They've gone a little bit too far there, so I'm just lifting that off with a damp brush. And then add in a bit of dark. and fiddle around with it a little bit. And then I'm just putting a bit of clear water at the bottom again, and that will just slowly seep upwards. Like that. And then now, because this is still wet in the background, I'm going to put some of the pale blue and probably the grey as well. Now leave plenty of white. So it's just really like we did the sea in the background, but this time we're doing it on damp rather than on dry paper, but leaving plenty of white. Put a little bit darker in for some waves, the shadow of waves. That's a bit dry there. Put a bit of water on. And then I'm going to do some water here at the bottom. And actually my paper's begun to dry a little bit, so just get a bit more water on. It looks a bit weird at the moment with like an outline around that rock, but I will sort that out. You can see that rock looks like it's sitting in the water. It's not just plonked on top of the water. It looks like it's sitting in the water, which is what you want to get. That's the effect you need. Put little darker bits in. So I've not speeded this up again, just until we get a few rocks done, and then I will start to speed it up a bit later. But this way you can just see the correct process. I'm just going to put a little bit darker in there. That might be a bit too dark. Let's just see. I don't know. That might be okay. Right, let's just concentrate on this big wave while that's sort of drying. I'm just going to wet the wave in the middle. Actually, I'm not keen on that blue bit in the sky. I think might just get that off. And take a bit of this out, because there's a few little marks in the sky which I don't like, so I need to sort of match that up. This will probably need more work later. But that's what I will do right at the end finally. I sort of look at the picture and I will suggest to you that you prop it up somewhere and keep walking past it and having a look, and you'll see things that you don't like and jump out at you, but we're not there yet. I'll just do a bit. Right, so just make sure that's all wet. And then we'll do the same thing again by putting in little bits of colour, because the sea you'd see parts of the sea through the surf, and there'd be little shadowed areas. It can't just be a big white splodge. And I can already see that the main rock on the right, that dark bit that we've got on the left there, is not going to be right, but I'm going to leave it for now, and I will think about what to do with that later. Let's put a bit down here. I'm using the grey now. You can use the grey and the blue. But it's all been put on damp or wet paper. So I'll speed this up a little bit now, so you get the idea. Put a little bit of darker in the bottom around that rock. Okay. Now looking here, I can see that's in shadow. You know, it's much darker on one side, so I'm going to fill this bit in with like a pale blue. So do look at your picture. Sometimes I sort of get carried away and just do my own thing, which is great most of the time, but sometimes you've just got to refer back. So I'm going to make this section a little bit darker. And it might have to go even darker still later, but as I've just said, that's for later. We'll assess it and look at it much later on. I'll do this little rock now. So they're all done in the same way, with slightly lighter at the top, a little bit darker at the bottom, but still make the bottom quite soft so that the water is splashing around the base. Put some black in. So where am I up to now? I'll just make this rock a little bit darker here. It was a little bit pale, got a little bit lost. Might put a bit of black in there in a sec. Should I leave it? Don't know. Yeah, might leave that. Just take off, make sure you've got a nice crisp edge at the top of the rocks. So let's just speed this up now. I've got a few bigger rocks here in the foreground. You will see as I start them, you probably can't see the pencil lines brilliantly. So I've left it light at the top. Now the reason that I haven't got a very soft bottom edge to that is that there's going to be another rock in front of it. It'll make sense in a second. So light at the top, dark at the bottom, just the same. Looks a bit weird at the moment because that certainly doesn't look like it's sitting in the water. Looks like some sort of appendage, but there is a reason I'm doing that. Give it a quick dry. Just going to make it slightly darker there so that you can see the top edge of the rock by making the background slightly darker. You can see that stands out just a little bit more. Okay, so this is the rock that's in front of that rock I've just done. So I'm still going to leave a light edge at the top. I'm just bringing that colour onto the rock a bit. Just be careful where it touches the rock at the front. Now this time I've left it soft at the bottom of this rock because that's where it's going to meet the water. And put your darker on. Okay, so let's work on the other side while those are drying. Now this time I'm just going to wet it all, and I'm not going to sort of wet around the rocks. I'm just going to do the whole thing, and you'll find your favourite way of doing this. But when I put the sea colour on, I will sort of leave the rocks out, hopefully. I'm just fiddling around until it looks right, until I think, yeah, that looks okay. You can see I've left like a white bit there. I'm putting a little bit of the orange on as well, just to reflect the sunlight. But there's a white bit there, which is going to be a rock. Just do it again, it's beginning to dry a bit. And then carry on. I'm not coming right the way down to the bottom because that's going to be the next stage when we put the cling film on. I'm just working to just below where these smaller rocks are. So you can see I've left another white blob there, that's going to have a rock in it. And then I'm just going to show you that I just want to put a few extra ones in the background here. Now that looks a little bit weird, just like that. But this is what you do. You paint it on. And then while they're still wet, we will soften the bottom edge. Okay, so with clear water, what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint underneath it and then just come up to it ever so slowly, and then just touch that bottom edge, and then that will just slowly diffuse into the water. I'll put another one in here. So you can put in as many as you want. You must soften that bottom edge, otherwise they'll look, well, they'll just look weird. I'm not going to do too many now. I might put more in later. Just soften the bottom edge. If I just left it, this one like this, it looks a bit like a shark's fin. But I'm going to try and make that look like it's just sitting in the water. By putting a shadow underneath. And another little one. Still looks a bit like a shark fin, but I'll fiddle with that later, I think. So let's do these. Now that the paint has, the background water has dried, the paint has dried, now I can start these. Same old thing, light at the top, darker at the bottom. And I did just wet the bottom of that, actually, of that rock. So it's softer at the base. It's quite difficult to explain sometimes. But once you start doing it, you'll see. I'm just dropping clear water in there and tipping it ever so slightly. Perhaps I've done too much there. And let's do this one. So when you have a few rocks in front of each other, then do the background one first and then work forward. Do the background one, allow that to dry, then work forward. Light at the top, dark at the bottom, and I've left that crisp edge at the left-hand side at the bottom as well, for the same reason as I did on the other side, because there's going to be another rock in front of it. I hope that makes sense. Just dropping a bit of green in as well. Quite like that green and the blue, because I think it looks nice on that rock in the foreground, the big one. Put your detail on. Put a bit more on there. Fiddle, fiddle, fiddle. And do this one. While that bigger one is drying. So I've wet the bottom of this. Drop a bit of green in. Put a bit of water at the bottom. Now, I need to sort of, some of these have got like a definite shadow underneath them. So let's just try that. So just put like a really, with blue, I'm just painting a definite shadow, which has got quite a crisp edge. Now you can soften bits of it, but I'm going to leave some bits quite dry edged really. Well, I think it looks okay. So we've got this bigger rock here. I bet you're fed up of rocks. I'll be glad to see the back of them, I must admit. So with a clear brush, I'm just wetting little bits and getting rid of bits I don't want so that I can put a nice shaped rock in the foreground here. And then same again, light at the top. And then I'll put a little bit of grey at the bottom as well there, like a shadow in the sea. And then start to add darker colours. I'm just going to show you a little technique in a minute with a credit card. You might have heard of using a credit card to get the effect of rocks, and I've not used it on the others, but I thought it might be a nice thing to show you. I'll just put some salt on here first. And that can just be doing its thing. Now I'm lifting a little bit off with my brush, putting a bit of green on, blah blah blah, etc etc, same old thing. It's a bit brown actually, I could do with some more blacky colour, I'll do that after. So I'll put a bit of detail in, and a bit of the black now. Lift a bit off, put a bit of green in, fiddle fiddle fiddle. Soften, soften, soften. Same old, same old, same old. So if you get a nice light top edge, it begins to make more sense. So, credit card. I've just cut one up, and you should use it flat and then just drag it from the top. It looks like I'm using the edge actually, but I'm not. I'm actually using it quite flat, and it just pushes the paint out of the way. Now it's a really nice effect, but it might be a bit incongruous with everything else because I haven't used it anywhere else, but I thought I would just show you that. And I think the highlights that it's taking off are going to be too white, so I'll probably allow it to dry and then put a little bit of colour back on. And then you can dab it and you can get little cracks that way by using the edge. Make it a little bit darker here because that looks a little bit pale and insignificant, that one. Now it's dried. We're nearly there, folks, for this session. So here we have it. That's where we're up to. So please take your time, get to that stage, and there's probably only 1 or 2 more sessions. It might be 3 days before I put the last one on. Yeah, so happy painting and see you in session 6.